Today, on Day One Outdoors, we head to the Sandy River to cover side drifting,
first pass,
and bobber dogging techniques.
The adipose right here has been clipped off.
Join us for early season winter steelhead and to discuss the value of hatcheries on our local waterways.
The forecast, showers and thunderstorms today with strong southwesterly winds to 37 miles per hour.
It's a numbers game, especially for the situation that we're in. We're coming off of a high water event here 48 hours ago.
The outdoors is not a hobby. It's not our passion. It is our way of life. We make the perfect cast, slow our breathing to execute a perfect shot, spend hours researching locations and techniques. Regardless of effort, we fail. This series is not about incredible bites or trophy animals. Our goal here at Day One Outdoors is to educate our viewers utilizing new technology to offer a different perspective. Watch as we research new areas, plan out the day, and adjust to changing conditions. If not for other experienced outdoorsmen teaching me along the way, I wouldn't have this life. I owe it to them to pass this knowledge along. I owe it to you. Join us here on Day One Outdoors, and let's learn how to become more successful in the field and on the water from day one.
Cutting the size of baits for our type of water we're in. So if we're in cleaner, clearer water, use a little bit smaller baits, more dime size. Water's off color and high a little bit. I use nickel to quarter size baits. So our first cast will cast off a lot of the single eggs. And so after your first cast, now you're down to a dime size. And this works really well. So of course I got it cured with Pro Cure's bait cures. And this one I've added a couple other little things to it as well. And it's a good little steelhead combo. So we'll see how they work today.
I'll pull my rods on and pull my one.
Morning. Pull right here, or are you okay?
That was cold. We're just pulling up to our first spot here this morning, and there's a lot of different theories behind steelhead fishing, and one of which is when the water's high, fish high. And we've had high water here for the last couple weeks. It's been steadily dropping here for about the last 6-7 days. But here's the caveat to that. It's early in the season. So yes, there are fish that are already upriver, up in the higher stretches of the Sandy. But today we're actually fishing the lower section. And the reason why is because it is early in the season. There are still plenty of fish filtering in through the mouth from the Columbia River up into the lower Sandy here. So we're gonna be fishing from near the boat deadline all the way on down towards the mouth of the river and just trying to cover as much water as possible. And a great way to cover water quickly is by side drifting. So what we have set up here is the Lamb-Glass Infinity 98JS. This has become my all-around favorite winter steelhead rod just because it's a great multi-purpose rod. Whether I'm using it for side drifting or fishing bobbers, this is just a great all-around setup. We're using a 3,000 size spool here right now, and you're gonna add a little bit of weight by going with a larger spool like this, but what it does allow you to do is have a larger arbor so you can pick up your line a little bit quicker, especially on these acrobatic fish. The line I have on here is High Vis line. This is Maxima Treasure. It's a multi-polymer line that's new to the market, and what I like about this for side drifting is that it has less stretch than other monofilaments. So you're gonna get a little better feel of what's happening down there on the bottom. Now here on the Sandy River, we have both rock and sand. So being able to tell exactly what's happening when your lead is tapping bottom will help you determine what type of water these fish are sitting in. From my 10 to 12 pound main line here, that Maxima Treasure, down to a 3-way swivel. And you see on the 3-way swivel, it has a little snap on it right here. And what we do, Brandon and I actually set up our weights differently. I attach my tubing, my surgical tubing, directly to the snap. And then I just insert my pencil lead into the surgical tubing. And the reason why I do that is because when the lead gets stuck, it'll stretch and either break the surgical tubing or the weight will just slide right out. So I'm not losing my entire setup. On Brandon's setup, he actually punches a hole, steal that from me real quick, punches a hole through the lead and then puts the surgical tubing over it. And the reason he does that is the surgical tubing will actually help it slide better over the rocks. And the way he punches his holes, it'll actually break through that soft lead really easily if he does get hung up. Now on down to our leaders here. It's winter steelhead. Water clarity is going to be typically 2 to 5 foot. And so pound test going super light fluorocarbon is not always necessary. This is just your typical 12-pound ultra green. We're running about a 3.5 foot leader right here. We want to run a little bit shorter leader because the water clarity is about 4 or 5 foot right now. Keeps our presentation near the bottom. If you run a longer leader, it's going to be up higher off the bottom. Shorter leader, a little bit closer. So as a general rule, if it's really dirty water, run shorter leaders, 24 inch to 30 inch. Clear water, a little bit longer, 5 to 6 foot. So from our 12-pound ultra green down to our setup here, this is a size 1 hook, and that pairs perfectly to a size 10 corky. We're trying a lot of different setups here today. I'm gonna run a corky and a piece of prawn cured up in that Pro Cure prawn cure. And Jack and Brandon are running yarnies and corky clusters with a couple different kinds of Pro Cure eggs. We're gonna throw the kitchen sink at them and see what works. So time to cover some water, throw some bait on here, and figure out where these fish are laying today. First pass.
Oh, right. There we go. Woohoo!
Jump in.
Nice one. Oh,
It's a jumper.
That didn't take long.
it takes good boat control to hook steelhead.
It has to be good boat control.
Here we go.
All right, is the fish ready?
Got it. Nice. That's how we do that, huh?
You know what?
Right on.
Honestly, today's kind of a special day. This is where it all started, and we don't get the opportunity to fish the three of us together very often at all.
Not at all.
And so the fact that I get to come out here with my mentor and then one of my best friends on the river that I grew up fishing, the river where he grew up fishing, where he made his career start, and then Jack, where you fished here, guided here for the last 30 years. I mean, this is a special day, and to catch a fish on the first pass, that's awesome.
Of course,
Nice
I
one,
hooked
too.
it.
Well, yeah,
I have seniority here.
I was driving the boat for you. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
and I was doing
It
nothing.
was a team effort. Well, you netted it. So it was a whole team effort.
And it's
Did
a
you
hatchery,
keep it?
you bet.
All right. Yeah. Nice.
You know, purple that belly is.
Hey, man. Nice fish, Dad.
Thanks
First
for driving the
trip.
boat, Brandon. Cody, thanks for netting the fish.
Now, of
It was
course,
a team effort.
we can tell this is a hatchery fish because the adipose right here has been clipped off. Okay, they clipped that off in the hatchery as a juvenile. Also, what you notice a lot of times on the hatchery fish is your dorsal fin would be kind of chewed down a little bit. They don't clip that. They actually, as little babies in the ponds, they nip at each other on the top fin.
Rubbing on the concrete and everything
So
else, yeah.
this gets nipped down a lot. You don't see it on the kings, but just the steelhead. For some
Steelhead,
reason,
it
steelhead
happens
do
a
that.
lot.
You see how purple his cheek is, his belly. It's a new fish that just came in, just like we talked about. And when the hatchery gets them, they recycle the fish. When they do, they'll put a hole punch in the cheek. Do you remember what side they put it on?
On the right side.
On this side here. So they'll put a hole punch
It's
here.
right here, right there.
So that way you can tell if it's been up to the hatchery and then brought back down.
This fish bit for a little bit before Dad set the hook.
And let him eat it.
So this fish now has the hook inside of its mouth. It's on the bottom of the jaw. That means the fish had turned and was following with it. We could see on the rod tip that it was loading up from the weight of the fish pulling back. But the fish actually turned and came with it.
Look how far he took it down. He just choked that procure down there.
That procure's deadly stuff. Them fish really like it.
That was our first drift. Dad hooked that fish. Dad was the furthest rod up in the boat. So actually Cody and my gear went by the fish before my father's gear got near him. So my dad did something a little different. He's actually using just egg and yarn. Cody and I are both using a corky with bait. I have egg, he has a piece of prawn. A lot of times if the fish are aggressive, they'll bite the first rod that comes by them. But if they're not as aggressive, sometimes early in the morning, the further up rods that are making the second or third drift by that same fish will get the fish to turn on it. So far, first drift, it's early in the morning, water temp is only 40 degrees. Maybe it was coincidence that, it was a glass rod, or maybe it was just because it was cold. Maybe we'll see this afternoon more of the rods towards the back of the boat get bit first. But let's keep fishing and see what we see.
We're just starting our second drift here right now, and Brandon's getting the boat all squared up. And when we cast, we always want to start with the downstream guy first. The reason why is it helps separate our gear out. So Brandon's going to go ahead and cast, and I'm going, and then Jack goes right after that. That ensures that our gear is spread out and our lines are getting tangled.
Cody, what you really want to do is you want to make sure that when you set up your boat for the drift, you want to make sure that if your boat's in slower water, you want to be in full reverse to catch up the same speed as the water you're fishing.
Just like we did in the last pass.
Just like you did in the last pass. Very key when side drifting, you are going the same speed as your gear is, or just a little bit faster. We're not dragging the gear, but we're allowing it to free drift with the current.
Right. And I also noticed too that right now, whether you're in reverse or forward, you always keep your bow pointed away from the lines. And is that for keeping control of the distance from where you are in the hole to where the lines got casted to?
It really depends on the type of water you're in and where your stern is aiming.
Sure.
If you're in a boil and slow water, your stern is going to be pulled away, and so it pushes the bow away.
Gotcha.
Fish on!
You're killing us, Jack. What's going around you?
I have seniority.
Hot fish.
Hot fish. Just casted and hadn't really got to the bottom yet, and I had a bite, and I swung and I missed him. So I just laid the rod back down. The fish must have followed it, and he came back and grabbed it again, I'm guessing. I hadn't even got to the bottom because we just cast it.
It's a wild fish.
Kind of rolled up on the line a little bit.
We got a wild fish here, because the adipose is here. You can also see, as we talked about earlier, that hatchery fish had a really beat up dorsal fin. Look how nice this dorsal fin is on our true native fish, our natural spawn fish. It's a nice male buck right here. Come out of the net. Beautiful colors. Nothing wrong with this fish at all. Now, a lot of people talk about putting your fish back in, kind of reviving them, doing this. Just talking with a hatchery worker, what they try to do is they try to throw the fish face down in the water as fast as possible so it gets water directly into his gills right away. So doing something like this. He's already swimming. So they're saying that's a better way to release these fish now, because that's water pushed right in their gills and they're forced down into the water and they're swimming right off the bat. So
good shot of oxygen.
Good shot of oxygen and gets them going. So, here in Oregon, we get to pull the wild fish out of the water. Washington, you can't. But for us in Oregon, we can kind of pick them up and shoot them into the water, get them kick-started, they're going. So I think it's better for the fish.
Fishfield is your one-stop shop online for the gear you need here in the Pacific Northwest and beyond. From salmon and steelhead, saltwater, trout and kokanee, even crabbing. Visit fishfield.com today to place an order and have the gear you need shipped fast. Fishfield.com, we have what the Northwest outdoorsman needs.
Every once in a while, a new lure comes along that catches every angler's attention. It could be because of all the irresistible colors and finishes, or the patented skip beat action, or maybe it's the wide variety of sizes designed for salmon, trout, walleye, steelhead, mackinaw, and more. But just for the record, we know one thing for certain. We didn't design the maglip to catch fishermen. Yakima Bait Company.
So Jack has hooked 2 fish in 3 passes and probably had a 3rd bite there. And he got it on the yarn. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pop my corky off and take off the shrimp as well, that little prawn tail that I had. The yarn color that he was getting bit on there had a little bit of your typical steelhead colors, your reds and your pinks, but also had a touch of chartreuse. So I'm putting in a little bit of chartreuse here on this yarny with the corky cluster, the smallest size there, with pink and a splash of chartreuse. And then the same Procure bait that Jack was fishing there. And I think that was Jack, that was original Red Hot double stuff.
It is.
Yep. All right. So I'm gonna throw that on there and see if that makes a difference. Because like Brandon mentioned earlier, the last rod through typically does not get all the bites. And that is exactly what's happening right now. And Jack's pointing at himself because what a shock, he's fished this river for 3 decades. 3 decades or?
4 decades.
What are you at now, 60, 80 years in this river?
So in the late 60s, when my dad, Brandon's grandpa, started guiding through the early 70s, there was some tremendous steelhead fishing out here on the Sandy with all the hatchery production that was put in. The summer steelhead run was off the charts. Winter steelhead fishing was absolutely outstanding, but none of the fish were fin clipped in, so it was hard to judge what we had. Through the 80s, they started the fin clip program, and then we started having a lot of pressure from natural spawn or wild fish advocates against hatchery programs. Even though it provided great opportunity for catching steelhead, there were a number of people, even to this day, that are still against hatchery programs. You know, if you have any stream that runs into the Columbia River, there's going to be a lot of crossbreeding of fish that stray into all the other watersheds. We have personally caught fish here in the Sandy from Hood River. We've caught them from the Washougal River, even caught steelhead from the East Fork of the Lewis River from different tag programs of fish that we've caught in here. That's just nature's way of production and mixing the gene pools naturally to have more diversity against disease and issues like that. You'll never have a pure strain river if it runs into the Columbia River.
Honestly, I wouldn't be standing here in the boat right now if it wasn't a consumptive fishery. Back when I took my first guided trip when I was 8 years old here on the Sandy River, I wouldn't have the relationships I have with the people in the industry if it wasn't for this being a consumptive fishery. Because the first thing I did is I took that fish home, I showed it off to all my friends. I even wanted to take it to school, but it got me hooked. It brought me out here time and time again to keep after these fish. Winter steelhead are some of the toughest fish to catch anywhere in the world. But to have a fishery where you can have a consumptive catch and be able to take it home, share it with your friends and family, I think is very valuable, not only to this specific fishery, but to our fisheries as a whole. We just put a couple casts through some good looking water here at the very top end of the stretch, and then right underneath that little overhanging tree, and no bites here with our side drifting gear. So I think it might be time to switch up our technique and pretty much use the exact same lures and bait, but just give the fish a different look, a different speed of presentation. And I think bobber dogging is a good way to do that, especially with it being as cold as it is.
The gear we're using today is actually the same rods we're using, the Infinity 9/8. Okay, these are geared with that 3000 size reel. We got the Maximum Braid 8. This is a 30-pound high-vis yellow. This is a little different than our side drifting gear. We're actually using an Aerofloat. We call it the bobber dogging medium size. We have a Dave's Tangle free weight. We got a 3-way swivel with a snap. Got about 3.5 foot of Maximum Ultra Green 12-pound to a Yarny. Some Procured. We got a Yakima Bait cluster, egg cluster here right above it. And then on the double rig, we've tied another 12-pound Maximum Ultra Green to the bend of the size 1 Gamakatsu hook. It's about 2.5 feet, and we pinned a corky about 2.5, 3 inches from the hook. Another size 1 Gamakatsu hook. The technique with bobber dogging here is having your lead drag the bottom the whole time, no matter if it's 2 feet of water or 8 feet of water. So with having this lead down here, this is rubberized. This is going to help bounce along the bottom. We're going to set our bobber stop 6-7 feet up, even if we're casting in 2-3 feet of water. This buoyancy of this bobber and the flat butt of the bobber itself is going to help pull the gear downstream. The current's pushing on this bobber. With using the braid, we also throw a loop in the line downstream of the bobber. So So we're fishing this totally different than you normally would fish a standard bobber and jig, bobber and bead setup. So we're actually having this rod lay sideways on the water. The current is pushing this end of the bobber, pushing it downstream. So it keeps your gear dragging and floating downstream without getting hung up very often. I just let him kind of go where he wants to go. There's some steelhead on here. This one bobber dog, and this one fit the yarny with the porky cluster on it. A smaller fish, it's probably about 5 pounds. Yeah, I think it's a hatchery. It's a hatchery, it's a keeper, so we'll go ahead and keep this fish.
Nice. So Brandon, that was on the yarny with the corky cluster, and you're still running that red hot double stuff, weren't you? I think I was the only one running the liquid brine, right?
That was on the red hot double stuff.
Yep.
Yarny just fell out too. A little bit of blood right here, so you can see that the yarny was hooked right here in his maxillary. It just fell out in the net. But another nice little hatchery buck, about the same color as the other one, maybe just a little bit longer in the river, maybe another day or two. Got a little more color to him. Dorsal fin's bent over again. It's another hatchery fish, of course.
Brandon, we just talked about it too. Different presentation.
Different presentation. That'll work though. Beautiful sandy river buck. 6 pounds.
1, 2, 3. Got it.
6, 168.
Salmon swim up to 3,000 miles to return to their exact place of birth to reproduce. Well, most of the time.
See, my eggs are starting to get crushed up a little bit just from casting constantly and hitting the water. So I'm just going to take some more of this water-soluble scent. And I'm changing it up. Last time I tried the squid, this time I'm going with the shrimp, water-soluble. So what's nice about these water-soluble scents is not only does the yarn really absorb it well, but when it gets down in the water column close to the bottom where the fish are at, it actually stays down at that depth. A lot of the oils will float up to the surface. This water-soluble will stay down that depth where the fish are at. See if that works. What? He casted and jumped and it hit his bobber and then went and bit the hook.
It hit the bobber first. That thing swung on the bobber.
Hey, you cheated, man. Your dad didn't say cast yet.
That was awesome. I was up there in like 2 feet of water. That's awesome.
Okay, I am up. I'm gonna be on your right side here, Brandon. You got them all sorts of lassoed. Yeah, go ahead and swing him. Yeah, buddy. That is a fat fish.
Fat hen.
Look at that thing. Just gorgeous fish.
Here again, it's another nice hatchery. See the dorsal fins kind of nipped over a little bit.
Okay, roll it back towards me just a little bit. Okay, right here. Oh, cooperative fish. 1, 2. Slap hands. Yeah. Oh, he low hold me.
Hey, when you're born on the river, you're allowed to do this. This is on the trailing rig, it's not on the yarny rig. cool fish. This one is a recycle fish. We can tell it's a recycle because it's got a hole punch in its gill plate. Okay, so what this fish did is this fish swam up the Sandy, swam all the way up about 30 miles up to the hatchery called Cedar Creek Fish Hatchery, swam up the creek into the collection site. The fish hatchery guys took all the fish out of the collection area and did some samples on them, took a hole punch, punched it in the gill plate, put it in their vehicles and brought it back down to the lowest ramp on the Sandy, which is the Lewis and Clark boat launch, and re-released them back in the river. The reason why they do this is because these fish are pretty early. They're not gonna spawn until March, so there's no reason for them to hang on to them for 3 months.
We've been talking about how important it is for new anglers to catch fish, and having this recycle program through Cedar Creek Hatchery and a lot of other local rivers around here, it's really important that they do that because it gives opportunity for new anglers to get out there and have a second chance at catching these fish.
Yep.
And like we talked about earlier as well, get to take it home.
Yep.
So this is awesome that we were able to catch one of these.
This is cool. This is my 6th day fishing out here this season so far, and this is my 9th hole punch fish this year. So that's 9 extra fish that I wouldn't have had a chance at if the Department of Fish and Wildlife wouldn't have been doing this program. So so for me and my clients, some new fishermen too that have been out here, it's an added catch for them.